Phonetically for me. Right, love, warmth, big round of applause for Carol Mahoney. Thank you.
Hello, I'm Carol Mahoney. Close enough though, thank you. And I'm an inorganic geochemist. Actually, I just realised a few hours ago, that's a really bad introduction. You're probably all thinking, now, either there's been some huge leap in robotic engineering that I haven't heard about, or there's some really ill-advised plastic surgery in front of you, or that girl is 100% organic, and yeah, you'd be right. That's a really bad introduction, so I'll start again. My name's Carol Mahoney, and I do inorganic geochemistry, but I am in fact organic. And more specifically, I do it on rocks. I look at metal concentrations, things like uranium, vanadium, and my personal favourite, molybdenum. and I use the elements to look for clues to what the environment was like when the rock was deposited. And because I use chemistry to look for clues, I like to liken myself to Abby off of NCIS. The comparison's a little bit ill-founded, really. You give Abby off of NCIS a tiny fragment of rubber from a skid mark on a road, and 2 hours later she'll tell you not only the brand of the tyre, the car it's likely to be attached to, when the skid mark was made, but probably what the guy had for dinner who was driving it. And give me a sample in 2 weeks, and I could tell you, more or less, with quite large error bars, whether or not that rock was deposited under an oxic water column or a water column without any oxygen. I'm not going to beat myself up about it though, because I like the comparison a little bit too much. But Abby has got some advantages over me. Her samples are really pristine, collected by a professional, put in a little Ziploc bag and sent straight to the laboratory. And my samples are shit. Come all the way from Colombia, it took bloody months for them to arrive. And the rocks themselves have been buried to thousands of metres depth, and they've been really hot. And then they've been thrust up into a mountain belt where they've been exposed to oxygen and water for hundreds of years. So the original geochemical signal's really confusing, it's proper perplexing. Also, she's got much better kit than I've got. The fanciest thing I use is an atomic absorption spectrometer. Thank you, it is really cool actually. But the computer that it's hooked up to though is a little old, and you have to desperately write down the results really quickly before they go off the top of the screen, because it only takes floppy disk. So she's quite a lot sassier than I am. I think I might have even been chosen for my distinct lack of sassiness. You don't want too many sexy, sassy ladies in the laboratory, just in case they distract all the male students. But the main difference between us is that Abby from NCIS, her samples are a few hours, maybe a few days old, whereas my rocks are 65 million years old. Yeah, I can see you getting excited. My rocks are from the coolest period of geological history, the Cretaceous. Where all of your favourite Tynes from Jurassic Park are actually from. And why would you want to know about the environment in the Cretaceous? Well, there were great big volcanoes spewing millions of tons of carbon dioxide into the atmosphere during the Cretaceous, and it really screwed up with the climate. It varied massively, and it's a really good analogue for how fucked up the world is going to be if we continue to burn fossil fuels at the rate we're doing now. But don't worry, I'm not here to lecture about global warming. We all feel guilty about our carbon footprint, and I feel really guilty about my carbon footprint. I felt guilty about driving all those short journeys, so I sold my car and I cycle everywhere now. I don't know if you can see my wonderful helmet hair, which I wear with pride and maybe a little bit too much self-righteousness, but I felt really guilty about the carbon footprint of my diet as well. you know, all that thing with the cows and the methane from the farts and all that. But I'm not really sure if I've lowered my methane emissions becoming vegetarian, but yeah, sorted out. I even feel guilty about having sex. There's the chance that I could spawn a child, and that little thing is probably going to have a carbon footprint 3 times mine in my lifetime. If I use contraception, it makes fish infertile if I take the pill. And then there's vast tracts of Amazon rainforest that are being cleared for rubber plantations. No, I'm not here. I'm not here to make you feel guilty about global warming. In fact, I'm here to tell you some of the improvements that the world will go through if it does, in fact, turn out to be a lot like the Cretaceous due to global warming. Number 1, during the Cretaceous, sea levels were a lot higher than they are today. In fact, at their peak, they were 200 metres higher than they are today, which is quite phenomenal, really. Pretty apocalyptic. But there's some good points to bring out of this. During the Cretaceous, there was a vast inland sea which covered most of the United States of America, from the Gulf of Mexico all the way up to the Arctic Ocean. I just like to imagine the millions of Americans illegally crossing over the border into Mexico. But every Mexican home has got its cook from Chicago and its cleaner from Connecticut. And neither of them can speak any Spanish. Number 2, more equable climate. In the Cretaceous, the whole world was a lot hotter, but the difference between the equator and the higher latitudes was much diminished. So it'll do wonders for the British tourism economy. It'll be actually warm when you go to the seaside. It'll be lovely. And number 3, probably because of this equable climate, during the Cretaceous, the ocean circulation broke down completely, and there were periods where the Atlantic Ocean was a vast, fetid pool of stagnant water, and below a few metres it was completely devoid of life. And at the bottom was great thicknesses of carbon-rich, sulphurous ooze. That's fantastic, isn't it? I have to know a lot about this carbon-rich ooze, because it'll eventually turn into rocks, which are a lot like mine, the ones I'm studying at the moment. And I know for a fact that it's really rich in clay, in trace metals and nutrients, and it's not dissimilar to the dead sea mud, which we pay a fortune for at luxurious spas. So in the future, good skin will not be a privilege of the rich. Everybody from pauper to prince will have beautiful pores. And it's in this organic rich mud that the earth can really put its hope, because it's a really big carbon sink, and eventually it will bring down the carbon dioxide levels, and it might actually get a bit chilly. Unfortunately, it'll probably take a few 100,000 years, and human civilization as we know it probably will no longer exist, but hey-ho! I want to leave you with one final image which makes me feel warm inside as a geochemist. I've had lots of sleepless nights looking at my rocks. The chemistry's all over the place, and it's really difficult to pick out what the environment really was like. And I like to imagine the geochemists of the future, be they inorganic robots or organic aliens, and they'll be looking at the few centimetres of mud rock which will represent life on this earth for the few thousand years that we've known it. And they are not going to know where to start with the crazy shit we brought up on the world. So on that note, I'm going to leave you. Thanks very much, and keep driving!
It's spelled Mahoney. Now that's Mahoney, where I come from. Never mind, we'll get right the next time. This is nice, I'm having fun, yeah?